productions, dance on camera, and other modes of expression. And this is the culmination of this 5-part event. And today we have a special event called Structure Making Bolero. This film was premiered in November 2020 during KNCDC's 10th anniversary online festival, Let's Get Together. Now a little description about the film itself. Everybody knows about the iconic musical composition and the dance choreography of Bolero. There have been different iterations, one from Denmark recently, but this one is a special one from South Korea. By showing the bold attempt of deconstructing the conventional Bolero through the premiere of 3 Bolero in 2017 and in 2018, Making Bolero has become a signature repertoire of the KNCDC, satisfying the popularity and artistry of contemporary dance. Deconstruction and destruction of the Bolero, wouldn't that be a way of creating a real Bolero? The work features choreography based on an approach to the structure of Bolero, using the sounds of everyday life and music in which ordinary noises expand into the rhythms of Bolero. This dance film will be a new adaptation of Making Bolero based on the visual grammar combining these 2 elements, showing its atmosphere and metaphorical mise-en-scene. So this today's presentation has 2 parts. First is dance on screen, showing the Bolero, making of Bolero. Then followed by that, we will have a conversation with Eva, one of the directors, and Vishwakiran, a Bangalore-based choreographer and director, and Rati Jafar, the acclaimed INCO Center's director. And I am 𝘏𝙖𝙡𝙑𝙖𝙣𝙑𝙖, Artistic Director of Art Gallery Center for Movement Arts. Welcome to this evening's presentation. Enjoy the film. Welcome back. That was Structure Making Bolero. I hope you really enjoyed this wonderful film, directed by Eva and Kim Seolin. Today, we are joined by one of the directors of the film and its editor, Eva, Indian choreographer and filmmaker 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠𝙖𝙦 𝘿𝙖𝙣𝙠𝙗𝙗, director of 𝘏𝙗𝙀 Center from Chennai, 𝘼𝙩𝙩𝙩𝙖𝙑𝙬, with me, 𝑘𝙚𝙤𝙀 And we have also wonderful Hoyen Kim, who will be translating for us. And I am 𝘏𝙤𝙀, Artistic Director of Artakalari Center for Movement Arts and Artakalari India Biennial. This forthcoming edition will be officially opened on 8th of January. This year, the biennial has a very important work from South Korea, thanks to the support of 𝘏𝙀 Center. Now coming back to the film Structure Making Bolero. Eva, its editor and director. As a film director and head of 𝘼𝙩𝙩 Film, Eva produces films and video media in independent manner. His work aims and specializes in creating stories by collecting and reconstructing images from various areas. In 2020, in collaboration with KNCDC, Korean National Contemporary Dance Company, he has created dance films, including Structure Making Bolero, Hiding Place, Three Angels, Untanked Impro, and more. His previous works include the short film Talk to Her, directed in 2020, which was nominated for international competition in Montreal Film Festival in Canada, while The Letter That Anyone Can't Hear and Story of Taiwan were nominated in Montecatini Film Festival in Italy. The feature film Gang and the short film Vibration, both of which he participated in as a director of photography, were nominated in Busan International Film Festival, Bucheon Fantastic Film Festival, Seoul Independent Film Festival, and San Diego Asian Film Festival. Now coming back to 𝑘𝙚𝙤𝙀. He is a performer, choreographer, dance and filmmaker, and dance academic too. He is the founder and director of 𝑘𝙚𝙤𝙀 Dance Company and Loka Studio for movement art practices in Bangalore. He was the principal dancer, head of training, and one of the principal choreographers of 𝑁𝑟𝑇𝑦 Dance Company for over 10 years before he started his own company. 𝑘𝙚𝙤𝙀 spread his practice to be trained under gurus and movement artists, going to be part of larger dance productions in the country and overseas. His training is diverse, ranging from Indian classical forms to folk and martial dance forms. Through his primary training and practice, though his primary training and practice is in contemporary dance and Bharatanatyam, he constantly trains and explores the folk dimensions of South Indian dance and trains extensively in martial art forms. His vision is to explore the possibilities in Indian dance, particularly within the vast folk landscape. His creations are mostly experiences of regional authenticities and existential peculiarities. He is also foraying into the world of dance filmmaking to take the art form and his stories to audiences across several mediums and demographics. He has explored the possibilities in taking contemporary dance to Indian cinema through several successful ventures as choreographer in South Indian regional film features. Now, 𝘼𝙩𝙩𝙑, she's an acclaimed director of the 𝘏𝙀 Center and has really changed the collaborative landscape between India and Korea in many fields, and culture among the most important one in that. And she has been partnering many organizations in India, setting up exchange program between artists from South Korea and India, and developing long-term partnership. And Artakalari is one of such organizations. And in 2020, she was given a special Prime Minister's citation by the South Korean Prime Minister's citation for her excellent work that she has been doing to nurture the relationship between India and South Korea. She's also a poet and a writer too. Okay, now welcome to all of you. Welcome to Hoyan Kim, who is our lovely translator this evening. Now coming to Eva first. That was a wonderful film. Eva, just one question. Bolero, as all of us know, is an iconic work, both in terms of music and as well as dance. And it has been pointed out to me recently, there was also some versions in Denmark, for example, and different, where I have seen some other versions in Italy. So I wonder, in your approach, you know, particularly the way you treated the music and its relationship to the choreography, what are the strategies you adopt?
네, 감독님 첫 번째 질문 드리겠습니다. 볼레로가 워낙 음악적으로도 그렇고 무용적으로도 굉장히 아이코닉한 콘텐츠인데요. 실제로 음악에서 출발한 굉장히 다양한 국가에서 많은 시도들이 있었고 저희가 굉장히 많은 어떤 사례들을 볼 수 있었는데 이번 댄스 필름에서 볼레로를 음악적으로 대하는 방법도 굉장히 흥미로웠고 또 그렇게 흥미로운 방법으로 음악을 대하고 그게 안무와 관계하는 방식도 굉장히 흥미로웠다고 생각합니다. 이번 작업에서 그거를 어떻게 전략적으로 조금 접근을 하셨는지 궁금합니다.
I will add one more point to that same question, which is, you know, I can see you take some motive from the music, a small portion, and then find either a physical action, and that produces a sound, like almost like mimicking, or a mechanical object, even a toy car. So all of these images and musical ideas and movement ideas, how did you think about those kind of correlations? Over to you.
네, 또한 조금 같은 맥락에서 덧붙이자면 음악 자체에서 모티브를 가져온 것도 있고 그 음악 모티브에서 물리적인 움직임에서 나오는 사운드 혹은 그냥 기계적인 일상의 발견에서 오는 사운드들로 활용한 것도 보였어요. 그래서 이런 다양한 이미지와 음악과 함께 결합해서 이걸 해체하고 다시 결합했을 때 어떤 방법을 취했는지 궁금합니다.
오케이. 네, 볼레로라는 음악이 어떻게 보면은 너무나 유명하고 너무나 많은 사람들이 좋아도 하는 그런 이제 컨텐츠고 이제 거의 장르이다 보니까 저희가 고민을 많이 했었는데요. 이미 이제 어떻게 보면은 기존의 그 공연으로 무대 위에서 한번 공연을 했었던 작품을 제가 이제 필름으로 다시 제작을 하는 과정을 가졌기 때문에 이제 완전히 제일 초기부터 이거를 제가 음악을 뭔가 관여하거나 만든 건 아니지만 오히려 이제 공연 때는 이제 뭐 불가능했던 소리라든지 불가능했던 사운드들의 효과 같은 것들을 필름에서는 오히려 이야기를 만들고 씬을 만들고 구조를 만들다 보니까 가능할 수 있는 부분들이 있었던 것 같아요. 인물의 무대 위에서는 인물들이 어떠한 직업인지 어떠한 사람인지를 정확하게 나타내주지 않지만 필름에서는 조금 더 정확하게 그 사람들의 이제 목적이라든지 그 사람들이 누구인지에 대한 설명을 대략적으로라도 하면서 하게 되니까 그럼 이 공간에서 나올 수 있는 소리들이 뭐 사과를 먹는 소리, 뭐 스탬프를 찍는 소리, 키보드를 치는 소리 이런 소리들이 이제 추가가 될 수 있었기 때문에 그 무대에서 했던 사운드와는 또 다르게 이제 필름을 위해서 이제 하나하나 그 공간에 맞게 이제 제작을 다시 새롭게 이제 했습니다.
Well, as we all obviously know, Bolero, as Jay said, the music itself is very famous and very known and liked, and it's almost nearly a genre for itself. Actually, the film was first based on the performance, which was a repertoire from the Korean National Contemporary Dance Company, which was made in 2017 and 18. So music for decomposing the music and rebuilding the music itself was already an idea of choreographer 𝘼𝙧 𝘖𝙧, But when we made the performance, which was originally staged offline, into a new medium, which is a film, we found out that we could find new possibilities that weren't able to happen when it was actually on stage. For example, on stage, the characters' professions or purposes was not as clear, but in the film we were able to make more clarify the purposes or their professions and who each characters are, which would make a more clearer place and space where these characters move. So through this place we could find out new sounds which weren't used on stage, and more detail and maybe more quiet sounds such as eating an apple or stamping or typing on keyboards. So I think we were able to find new sounds which were more suitable for the place that we set it up for the film, which was different from the stage.
One more related question. Was the stage performance set in an office space and the surrounding as this film shows?
공연 버전에서도 실제 설정이 회사 공간, 사무실 공간이 설정돼 있었나요?
따로 그렇지는 않고요. 이제 무대에서는 했던 공연에서는 따로 어떠한 공간을 나누지 않았고 하나의 공간이라는 설정 하에서 이제 무대 위에서 이제 그렇게 했던 건데 필름으로 제작을 하면서는 이제 이 사람들의 이제 직업적인 부분들과 그래서 뭐 회사가 컴퍼니가 어떤 회사냐, 그래서 저희가 설정을 했던 건 주식이 있는 이제 주식을 하는 회사라는 설정 같은 것도 있었고 그 캐릭터마다의 이제 계급을 주어줘서 그것들이 더 잘 그 캐릭터만 그래서 계급마다 할 수 있는 행동이나 이제 약간 의미도 부여를 했었던 것 같아요.
Originally, in the stage version of the performance, we didn't actually specify the place itself. It was just one common space where the dancers were. But when we moved into the film, we made more detailed occupations for the characters, and which made more a detailed space for the characters. And for an example, we actually thought that this company in the film would be a company that was related to financial and which would work with stock options and stuff. And also each characters, we also build it ranks for them. So each different characters had different ranks.
Now I invite Rati Jaffer to, oh, I'm stuck again. Sorry, there seems to be some issue with the internet. Rati, if that happens, you take over. Okay. So now this question is to Rati Jaffer. I was wondering, Rati, how did you go about selecting these films? And maybe I know you worked with 𝙏𝙖𝙡 to curate this one. And could you say a little bit about the rationale behind bringing these films together? This is, of course, the last one of the 5 films.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure, as always, working with 𝘼𝙧𝙯, and a real pleasure working with the Korean National Contemporary Dance Company. So thank you, Aram, and thank you, Boyeon Kim. If you'd like to translate that before I go on to my next line.
네, 우선은 질문은 카톡으로 보내드렸고요. 라띠가 먼저 이제 이번 기회를 통해서 특히 곽아람 팀장님과 함께 인도 관객들에게 국립현대무용단의 댄스 필름 소개할 수 있어서 좋은 기회였다고 감사하다는 말씀 전해드립니다.
네.
So really what happened with the pandemic hitting us 2020, 2021, almost overnight we had to move from presentations in physical spaces and touring models that we were quite used to presenting everything online. And it was a real challenge to sort of think out of the box of what we could present online in a meaningful, sensorial manner.
그래서 사실 우리가 모두가 겪었던 팬데믹 상황이 사실 물리적인 공간과 저희가 일반적으로 생각했던 투어 방식에서 온라인으로 넘어가는 그 전환을 빨리 해야 됐던 시기인데요. 못 봐도 온라인에서 뭔가를 보여주는 거에 있어서 조금 더 익숙한 것에서 벗어나고 좀 더 새롭고 의미 있는 방법을 찾아내는 데 중요했던 것 같습니다.
So almost overnight, we had to think of how we could, with the performing and visual arts, we do a lot of programming across these two genres. How do we present work that continues to touch the audience, that continues to grip the audience? So there were a couple of things we looked at, both in terms of duration of the piece, as well as the quality of the production.
그래서 공연예술과 시각예술 모두 사실 이렇게 온라인에서 전환하는데 거의 하룻밤 사이에 고민을 빨리 해야 됐었는데요. 가장 중요하게 봤던 거는 관객을 좀 오랜 시간 붙잡을 수 있는 게 좀 중요했는데 그런 면에서 중요하게 작용했던 기준은 실제 영상의 길이도 중요했고 영상의 퀄리티 자체도 중요했습니다.
And also very importantly, I think technology has come right into our lives, right center stage to what we do. So how has technology blending with the creative expressions, how can we meaningfully bring that on a digital platform, connect with local partners with whom we have presented physical work in physical spaces, and continue on this journey? So dance on film for us was something that we haven't tried or presented before. And I was very delighted to find that the Korean Contemporary Dance Company had actually commissioned and started working with young choreographers, young filmmakers to look at exactly this. What is the intersection between science and art? What is the addition that, or the value addition that technology brings to creative work?
온라인이 이렇게 대두되면서 당연히 기술에 대한 고민도 많이 생겼는데요. 과학기술이 어떻게 저희 공연예술과 잘 융합이 될 수 있을지도 굉장히 중요한 화두였는데 그래서 특히 인도의 그 공연예술을 같이 함께하던 아티스트들과 이걸 어떻게 잘 표현해낼까에 고민을 하고 있던 와중에 댄스 온 필름이라는 이번 프로젝트는 인도에선 사실 해보지 않았던 어떤 프로젝트였고 이거를 기획하던 와중에 국립현대무용단에서는 그 젊은 안무가들과 젊은 필름메이커들에게 이런 댄스 필름 제작을 위한 기획을 하고 있었다는 게 굉장히 반갑게 했었고 진행해왔던 게 굉장히 반갑게 다가왔는데요. 이런 식으로 무용과 기술의 어떤 교집합을 만들어내는 데 있어서 댄스 필름도 되게 중요한 부분이지 않았나 생각했습니다.
And we were in discussion about the kind of films that we could see, and Aram and Hoyon, they sent a wonderful list from which we could select. So we started in August, and it was an episodic series, one every month for 5 months. This is our last of the series. And it began with Beyond Black, which looked at artificial intelligence and algorithms and how AI was brought in and mapped on the dancer's body. We went on to then 3 short presentations, Hiding Place, Untact Impro, and 3 Angles, which really looked at space and movement and the dancer choreographer placed within that context, whether nature or whether indoor, outdoor, how do they navigate space? And the last one, Structure Bolero, which you just saw, was about what Jay said at the beginning, the challenge of deconstructing something that's so well known and bringing it into the sort of mundanity of everyday life and seeing how that works. So really the curation was to look at all angles of this creative expression and how film and technology and very intuitive creative expressions can be enhanced. And as I was said earlier, there's a lot that we were able to see close up, which we may not have seen if it was shown on stage. So I think that's a very interesting additional angle without taking away from dance, without taking away from the technicalities of that genre, bringing in as a complementary angle almost film. And what does film do in terms of adding that extra nuance?
So
Now,
저희가
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. 저희가 국립현대무용대에서 리스트 보내줘서 8월부터 5개월간 5개 작품 상영했는데요. 카톡에 보내드린 작품들을 각각 상영했고, 비욘드 블랙 같은 거는 이제 AI에 대한 이야기, 그리고 즉흥춤은 자연, 실내, 실루엣 등 다양한 공간을 탐구하는 방법, 그 안무적인 방법들을 탐구했고, 볼레로는 저희 처음 부분에서 얘기했던 대로 좀 유명한 작품으로 도전하는 것에 대한 이야기였고, 그래서 이런 것들을 보면서 전체적으로 다양한 관점을 댄스 필름을 통해서 볼 수 있었고, 또 기술이 어떻게 무용 안무와 적용해서 좀 다양한 인지적인 관점을 보완하고, 또 실제로 다양한 뭐 클로즈업이라든지 이런 부분들을 굉장히 영화적인 언어에서 안무를 보완할 수 있는 방법들을 좀 탐구할 수 있었던 것 같아서 5개월의 여정이 좀 재밌었던 것 같습니다.
So I just want to close by saying it was actually in response to the times, response to the unprecedented times in which we are continuing our work, to look at how these disciplines can become a very multidisciplinary kind of force. Going forward, there's so much that can be now experimented upon. I know Attakalari has already started, whether it's with lighting composition or whether it's looking at AI or it's looking at, you know, dancers in space, etc. So how do we bring film and filmmakers and dancers and choreographers to work within a certain ecosystem where we respect each other's technical skills, but it all comes together in the arena of dance? How does it work? So for us, it was a very, very interesting experiment. And thank you again to the Korean National Contemporary Dance Company and to Attakalari for partnering us to take this discussion forward.
그래서 사실 이 시간 자체가 저희가 준비되지 않은 상황에서 어떤 실험을 해야 되는 상황이었는데요. 이 일련의 과정에서 조금 각각의 요소들을 통해서 다원적인, 그러니까 댄스와 필름의 어떤 각각의 영역이 잘 섞여서 다원적인 어떤 영역을 탐구해내는 새로운 실험의 장이 될 수 있었던 것 같은데, 사실 실제로 조명, AI, 뭐 공간 등 다양한 부분에서 탐구가 시작되는데, 필름에 있어서 영화와 안무 각각 다른 시스템이 잘 만나서 서로의 기술을 잘 보완하고 잘 융합되는 적용하는 방법들을 있어서 앞으로 좀 더 다양한 시도들이 더 이루어지면 좋을 것 같고, 이번에 이 기획이 거기에 대한 어떤 출발점이 될 수 있었던 것 같아서 이 기관을 모두 감사드립니다.
Thank you, Rati, for such a wonderful, detailed answer, very clearly articulated. Thank you. Now, before I open it out to Vishwakiran, I just want to ask Eva, would you like to say any anecdotes while you were trying to do this during the pandemic time? You know, because there might be different kinds of challenges you might have faced, and you're very beautifully connected to the pandemic situation as well.
이화 감독님께, 그러니까 다음 질문으로 넘어가기 전에 질문인데요. 저희가 어쨌든 코로나 상황 속에서 제작을 하셨는데 그동안 어떤 뭐 어려움이 있었는지, 아니면 어떤 뭐 새로운 방법들이 있었는지, 결과적으로는 너무 잘 만들어진, 이런 상황에서 잘 만들어지고 좋은 결과로 되었으나 또 어떤 뭐 도전들이 조금 있었는지가 궁금합니다.
오히려 이제 코로나라는 상황이 터지면서 이제 원래는 무대 예술로 있었던 것들이 필름으로 또 많이 전환이 됐기 때문에 어떻게 보면 이렇게 필름을 만드는 필름메이커들이나 이런 사람들한테는 또 다른 기회를 되게 많이 주었던 시기였던 것 같고요. 그래서 이렇게 무용이라든지 이런 댄스 같은 부분들에 이제 많이 접하지 못했던 사람들이 그런 것들을 조금 더 이야기를 넣어서 만든다든지 그럴 수 있는 좋은 기회가, 어떻게 보면 좀 나쁜 건데 이제 코로나 상황 때문에 오히려 더 좋은 제작을 할 수 있는 여건들이 생긴 것 같고요. 뭐 사실 뭔가를 만들고 하는 데 있어서 막 코로나가 당연히 힘들지만 그 코로나가 지대한 엄청난 영향을 준 것 같지는 않아요. 뭔가 그냥 기존에 만들던 대로 계속 영화도 그렇고 드라마도 뭐 여러 가지 다큐멘터리 같은 것들이 그대로 만들어지고 있듯이 그냥 단지 그냥 마스크를 쓴다 뭐 그런 이제 여러 명의 사람들이 모였을 때의 어떤 행동들이나 이제 접촉에 가는 것들, 그런 것들 말고는 제가 봤을 때는 거의 크게 다르지 않다고 생각은 듭니다. 물론 이제 해외를 나가거나 이렇게 하는 것들에서 제한이 되는 부분이 이제 아쉬운 부분들이 있는 것 같아요.
So actually, since COVID, since the pandemic, many forms of performance arts were challenged to adapt into a language of the film. So as a filmmaker, it actually meant that there were new opportunities for the other young filmmakers. So for example, as for dance, many people who aren't used to the dance genre were able to put in more stories or build up more opportunities by making more creative collaborations. For the process itself, I don't personally feel there were too many difficulties in the actual process, because it was difficult and there were some challenges, but films were keep being made and documentary films were keep being made, and we were still working on what we were consistently making. So there were definitely restrictions when in terms of people gathering or having us to use masks, and also not being able to cross the border internationally was a huge challenge. But still, we did what we was always doing, and COVID it was a very hard time, but in another point of view, it did make more new opportunities for filmmakers for collaboration.
Yeah, I think Jay has dropped off, I'm not sure. So I'm going to just step in till he comes back on. So maybe a related question, Hoyeon, for the Korean Contemporary National Dance Company. You have commissioned and consistently commissioned, dance on film. We've used this as a title, but basically using film to push the discussion and the dialogue forward. Was that in response to the unprecedented times with the corona pandemic? Was that something that you started just now in 2020-21? Or is this something that you have been doing even in the past?
Actually, really commissioning and focusing on making dance films was our reaction to COVID-19, because not being able to perform on stage, and we had to in some way interact with the audience with dance. Dance films, we did have ideas of maybe that performance would be really nice to go on a more directed film, but as a National Contemporary Dance Company, we were really more focused on the performances. But due to COVID, it did make us feel the need and pressure to be able to talk to a different medium. So that was why we actually started more focusing on the dance films in its own direction.
In a sense, I think it's a wonderful opportunity thrown up due to the challenge of the pandemic. And I was just discussing with Jay yesterday, this might be something to think of for the future, both in India and in Korea, to take it to another dimension. Of course, to have physical performances in physical spaces, but as a hybrid offer to also take this forward through these sort of films. So Jay is back, and I'm going to hand it over to him to continue.
Sorry about this, some internet issues, I don't know. Now let me bring in Vishwakiran. Vishwa, you've been also working during the pandemic, of course, before as well, working with film, and during the pandemic, actually, you premiered a dance film, which I was attending as well. So could you shed a light on your approach to creating dance film or dance on camera in general, because you also work for feature film as well?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. The pandemic was, like I think how Eva pointed out, it did create opportunities for filmmakers in general to collaborate with other performing art styles as well. We had a huge challenge in finishing the film, because the film started in 2020 2019, but we couldn't finish it because of 2020. So, I mean, the problems that everyone across the world face, we face similar problems as well. But I mean, it just dragged the entire process out. But of course, we have the challenges are still on, where see, dance cannot happen if a bunch of people don't come together, and that is the only thing that we cannot do at this moment. So that's the problem that we handled for over a year, as to how do we come together and make dance happen. But I think things are better now, and we are working on several scripts on, and we did have enough time to look at how to present even stage works as works which can be converted into video format, so people can experience it through some kind of a video and visual kind of a thing, instead of people coming into auditoriums. So all the stage works also have like a cinematic version or a stage version being shot and presented on several platforms. So I mean, that's what we're prepping for as creators right now, finding several ways to present even things that were presented in physical form through online media, probably. I mean, should I wait for Hyon to translate that?
I'll translate your answers via a different chatting room, so no problem.
Oh, superb. Okay. So yes, kitchen in fact was one such experience where we came together, and I was very nervous when I did it, but fortunately it's received very well. We've won about 26 international awards so far, and it's doing well still. And that kind of reception really pushes, because we are a culture who saw Kalpana in 1948 by Uday Shankar, and then there's been a huge gap after that in what can be done using dance in cinema, in commercial cinema. But we're also the same culture who don't begin and end cinemas without dance. So we experience dance, but in a very different format, a very different way. So the way, I mean, where we start bringing in layer and depth and meaning into movement, and we replace words with movement, that's when it becomes very challenging as to who do we make this for, and the funding becomes a thing. There's so many challenges for a dance filmmaker in India, at least, to make a film happen. So those are the regular challenges mostly, as to fighting the commercial possibilities and the artistic, need for in a dance film. That's probably the challenge at the moment. Yeah.
You need to, wish to translate that at least briefly?
I've been translating to Iwa through a different platform by text, so I think we're okay. No?
It's okay. Okay. So
Thank
then
you.
I have one more question to Vishwam. So when you negotiate the kind of commercial film scene, because mostly the choreography is a unison, frontal, and how do you treat that, and how do the filmmakers of the commercial films, how do they take to ideas of dance on camera?
The thing with that is, what happens with cinema is a choreographer is brought in to enhance the vision of the director of an existing idea. So these are not, I mean, unless the directors themselves are visionaries of sort, where they'll give you freedom to create something particularly in the middle of a cinema, or you're just someone who comes in the middle through one piece of choreography. I mean, it's tough, especially to bring contemporary language into cinema, because we're still finding ways to bring contemporary dance into just the common audience. Cinema audiences are very different and difficult as well, because they come with because it's entertainment at the end of the day, and the contemporary dance can become a little more a genre where it requires people's attention. And so that way it's difficult to bring contemporary language into cinema, but there are a lot of filmmakers now, especially the young filmmakers are very intelligent, and then they're asking for newer language into their cinema. So we're finding newer ways in fantasy genres and different kind of romantic genres where contemporary dance can really find its way. But it's still a process. We're still not in a place where we can replace spoken language with movement. It's still too early to do that. But looking at the number of experimental films that are coming up, I think it's about time that's going to happen. And these are quite exciting times. I'm actually working on a couple of films which are very experimental in nature, even though they're commercial. So it's better now. It's way better than 5 years ago. That I can assure. It's only because, like Eva mentioned, where cinemas or film or video is becoming the prime medium in which people are experiencing all art forms. Music also, without video, people are not watching videos. Music, they're not listening to music without watching a video. That's why YouTube's doing so well. So everything requires a visual to experience that particular art. So it's because people are experiencing so much visual, they're okay in seeing newer things. So that's a positive for dance filmmakers, at least. Yeah.
Thank you, Vishwa.
Thank you.
I have one little question, maybe not directly to do this film, but both to Eva and Rati. Korea has done fantastically well over the last few years and even decades, actually reinventing the kind of the independence time, the history of Korea itself, and then setting up the Busan Film Festival and many support system for Korean filmmakers, and even people like Kinkituk. He was so well known in Kerala, for example. Even auto rickshaw drivers knew him. Unfortunately, we lost him now. But there are many Korean directors over the years has really caught the attention of the world. How this phenomena is impacting maybe the dance on camera movement in Korea, from both Rati and Eva.
네, 이거 라티한테도 가는 질문이기도 하고 이화 감독님께도 드리는 질문인데요. 저희 한국 영화가 특히나 최근 몇 년 사이에 엄청 발전을 하고 또 그 끊임없이 뭔가 새롭게 나오고 뭐 부산 국제영화제라든지 이런 다양한 영화제들과 더불어서 특히 최근 몇 년도 사이에 한국 감독들이 전 세계적으로 엄청 조명을 받고 집중을 받고 있는 요즘인 것 같은데 이런 현상들이 댄스 필름계에 어떤 영향이나 어떤 임팩트를 주고 있는 것 같은지 이게 실제 제작에 어떤 영향을 주는지 이런 것들이 조금 궁금합니다.
아직까지는 크게 이제 엄청나게 크게 관여가 되고 있지는 않은, 뭐 제가 영화계를 다 알고 있는 건 아니지만은 어떻게 보면 약간 뮤지컬 영화 같은 부분들도 원래는 이제 춤이 더 들어가고 이러는 것들이 많은데 한국에서는 생각보다 그런 영화들이 많이 제작이 되지 않고 있는 것 같기도 한데 이제 춤이라는 장르를 이제 어떻게 가지고 가느냐가 이제 되게 중요하다고 생각이 드는데 사실은 이제 무대라는 게 있으면은 무대를 저희가 공연을 보러 가서 이거는 무대 위에서도 사람들이 연기를 하고 있거나 춤을 추고 있다는 거를 물론 몰입은 하긴 하지만 인식을 하고 바라보잖아요. 그 무대 자체를. 근데 영화라는 건 사람들이 좀 더 이걸 영화라고 생각하기보다는 개인적으로는 그거를 현실화해서 어느 정도는 받아들이기를 바라는 것 같은데 지금 갑자기 대사를 안 하고 춤으로써 뭔가를 전달하고 이러는 것들이 이거 아까 그 비슈아가 했던 말에 좀 연관이 있는 것 같은데 이렇게 대사나 어떤 다른 부분들을 춤이나 현대무용 이런 걸로 전달하는 것들이 아마 굉장히 힘든 도전 같은 부분들이 있는 것 같아요. 그래서 뮤지컬 영화처럼 아예 춤을 출 수밖에 없는 장르가 된다든지 아니면 그렇게 해야만 하는 영화가 아니라면은 좀 쉽지는 않아서 아직은 제가 알기로는 춤이라는 것과 크게 이렇게 접목을 많이 시킨 게 아직은 좀 한국에서는 많이 없지 않나 생각은 드는 것 같아요. 네.
Honestly, I can't represent all of my colleagues from the film, but regarding the dance film field, I don't think there's that much impact yet in the field here, because in Korea we don't have many films that have dance in it, such as musical films that represent musicals, not much as you do in India. So but I think this is because usually when we perceive the genre of dance, when we go and see a performance on stage, people indicate that the dance is happening on stage. But when people go to see commercial movies, we expect more to be, have it more related to reality and more perceived as something that is real, a different fantasy. So I think this could relate to what 𝙭𝙩 said from his previous answers, that replacing movements instead of lines and characters, dialogues, it's still a huge challenge in Korea, because the Korean audience is not really used to that, unless the dance is actually really irreplaceable because it's a musical film or else. So I think still it's a huge take in terms of commercial films.
Kathy, you want to add to that?
Yes, generally, because having dealt with not just dance, but performance in general, looking at music, looking at theater, looking at both ends of very traditional to the middle folk, to contemporary, to popular culture. I think in Korea, from what I've experienced over the last 15 odd years, there is definitely a sort of ecosystem in place. It may be not perfect, but there is a lot of support which comes towards both the academic end, research end, as well as to the creation of new work and to the presentation abroad in famous festival platforms, for instance. So you take WOMEX for music, or you take the Venice Biennale for both film as well as for any kind of installation sort of work, etc. To fantastic university systems which allow you to do it. The Korean National University for Arts, for instance. The ability of organizations like Korea National Contemporary Dance Company to be able to pitch for and push the boundaries forward. And on the other side, we have K-pop and the K-dramas, for instance, which has been an explosive kind of presence right into our living rooms. And now with the pandemic and with social media galloping, I think it has become a sort of a very refined cultural export. And it's a very strategic soft power kind of move, which makes Korea an aspirational destination in all sorts of ways. I mean, we've had an exponential increase in terms of people wanting to learn Korean, not because of the employment opportunities, but to know what their popular idols sing or say, And this is the reason for people wanting to learn the language. And I'm talking about long waiting lists of people who want to come in and do this. Whether you look at cosmetics, or you look at Korean food, or you look at, which is all catch-all in the K-drama genre. So I'm just trying to say that there is, in a sense, a thought-out strategy, but there's also an independent space. And that independent space, like in all countries, is quite difficult to sustain, because you need to have funding support, you need to have continuity, you need to have organizations that support and, extend the presentation model, etc. So I think going forward, it's going to be very, very interesting as to how much of what we've learned and tried during the pandemic will be continued alongside the older model of physical presentation. How will it work? And I'm quite eager to see, with existing partners, what are the sort of leaps of faith that we will take? What are the risks we will take in order to do things a little bit differently from the learnings we have got? So from the Korean end, I mean, this is more as somebody who has engaged with large showcases like the PAM showcase, for instance, the Performing Arts Market in Seoul, what the Korea Arts Management Service does, the Arts Council of Korea does, the Korea Foundation does, Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism do. So there is a concerted body working to promote new talent and to look at sort of a, what can I say, a slightly more fearless approach in terms of how to push those boundaries. And I really hope that stays. That kind of, there is no sort of state control which sort of, puts it into a box. At the moment, it is not there, and that is why I think it is flourishing. And the kind of work we've brought to your @𝚿𝙗𝙗 biennial, for instance, Jay, it has all been about every year looking at something different, whether we're looking at a sort of narrative form of presentation, whether we're looking at something which is completely on the hip hop end of things, and how does that kind of counterpoint classical work, etc., etc. So for INCO Center, we've always been interested in the contemporary relevance of tradition, not tradition per se, but how is tradition being reworked and kept alive? So companies like Ambiguous Dance Company, for instance, or Second Nature Company, I mean, the kind of work that they're doing is really to continuously push these boundaries. And I found these dance films, and you have fantastic editing and work with the artistic director to sort of look at it in the here and now. It's kind of mundane sounds which then explodes into the music of the bolero. It's sort of fascinating how that happens. And for 23 minutes, you're like completely transfixed in terms of what is happening. So I think that is a challenge going forward. How are we going to, and what Vishwakiran was also saying, if we are looking at bringing in elements of this into mainstream cinema, how do we do this? Apart from enhancing what the director has to say, dance per se, how does it carve out its own space? We know in India that it's so difficult with Bollywood sort of, that huge shadow over us. It's all song and dance and everything else. But how do we take it away to look at it in a much more sort of engaged sort of way, to create a vocabulary, to understand how to decode this? How do we talk about this? This is a new phenomenon. So I think, Jay, organizations like yours is really helping young people to deal with it from all angles. It's the academic angle, it's the review angle, it's about how do you talk about dance, how do you consume dance, because it's all changing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Radhi.
Thank you.
I want to pick the brain of Vishwa now. See, Vishwa, say now, say for example, such a talented cinematographer like Santosh Sivan has shot some iconic dance sequences, the way he has filmed 𝚤𝙖𝙡𝙪 or things like that. And probably the only cinematographer who has got invited to be part of the American Cinematographers Association from India. So now there are many young filmmakers and cinematographers have come to the fore. Have you noticed any interesting trends in the Indian cinema where dance is featured or movement is featured? Is there any new ideas emerging?
The thing is, everyone asks me, because I've been doing so much of cinema, they ask me, will you be doing an Indian La La Land? But I tell them all Indian films are La La Lands, because we sing and dance all the time. So, I mean, we've been doing that for a long time. So it's not new to us. It was new for America, not for us. So when we say what we are discussing here, when we say dance, we're talking about converting this conversation into movement and then giving a movement dialogue. And that I find, without training our audience, it's too early for us to push through. So this is where we're all stuck. But we are trying to cheat a lot of new things, where we are bringing in slightly less sophisticated languages, where we are using techniques that is beyond dance, but using dance, but it reaches to everybody. This is, I mean, we have to do that. There's language, spoken language, and there is dance as well that helps people understand it. I always feel if we make a dance film, if we can't show it to just random 10 people from the street, and if it doesn't reach out to them, then it's very difficult for us to continue in that path, because we'll still be running into a lot of brick walls. I don't see any surprisingly new trends in bringing dance into cinema, but what I do see is a lot of people experiencing dance because of the TikToks and the reels and things like that, which is very short video formats. So people are seeing a lot of dance, which didn't happen before these very short things. So everybody's experiencing dance. They're probably experiencing through hip hop and freestyle and entertaining languages, not probably contemporary and the classical forms maybe, but they are experiencing it, which means dance has entered to many more households than it was before. So this is what we are trying as filmmakers. Now, when I talk to people, they directors, they're always asking me for very short dance things that would make everybody understand and move and things like that, because dance is part of our culture, especially folk dance is part of everybody's lives. So what is the replacement of folk dance in urban families? This is a question they're asking, which is a very, very interesting question to ask. What is an urban language, dance language that is part of everybody? For example, Dollu Kunita for us in Karnataka, it's believed that everybody's house is a Dollu and everybody knows how to play it in that particular village. So there, it's not something that is kept in a showcase where they see it, it's part of everybody's life. What is the urban replacement of this is a question they ask. It's a very tough question to answer. We can't just talk about it, say one movement, so this is the move that's going to happen. It's a whole vocabulary, right? So we're still figuring it out. And though La La Land has given us hopes, I think, I mean, we're finding ways, we're debating, we're trying to slowly eliminate language and fill it with movement. And then the next one we do little more, and then we see, okay, what happens now? And things like that. We at least try to create a premise where people can enter. So even if they don't understand the dance, they at least understand something is going on, you know, at least that to that extent. So this is that's what kitchen was also, for that matter, where we created a premise of a kitchen, and then there's tension, they'll understand that much, and then the movement, if they understand, fantastic. If they don't, also they understand something. But training the audience is the most important thing at the moment.
Thank you, Vishwa. Now I have a question slightly technical to Eva. You know, dance is a time-based art form. Film also sculpting in time, like Tarkovsky have said. So now, if you were to think about, in your think back the conversations you had with the choreographer and the dancers, how did you treat time, and how did you treat the idea of movement itself? Because when it came to the frame, already from a pedestrian movement or a dance movement, when it comes to the stage, we are altering its a sense of time and space. Time becomes elastic, space becomes very transitory. So in film, because you are also an editor and you deal with time and it's a dramaturgy continuously. So I would like to know your insight in terms of translating this movement from day-to-day movement to the stage movement, then to the frame, and how did you treat time, and what was your conversation like that to the choreographer? Over to you, Eva.
이거는 어쩌면 조금 기술적인 질문일 수도 있는데, 무용은 어쨌든 궁극적으로 시간을 다루는 장르의 예술이라고 생각하고, 영화 또한 특히 편집을 하시기 때문에 더더욱 어떤 시간성이 되게 중요한 요소로 작용을 한다고 생각하는데요. 볼레로를 만들 때 그 안무가님과 그 초반에 예를 들면 일상적인 움직임이 무대로 옮겨졌을 때 그 시간과 공간에 대한 변형과 고민이 있었을 거고, 또 그 무대에서의 움직임이 어떤 영화적인 프레임으로 들어왔을 때 새로운 어떤 이야기들과 고민이 있었을 것 같아요. 근데 그런 여러 가지 과정들이 어땠는지, 안무가와는 어떤 얘기를 했는지, 그리고 실제 영화를 편집하는 사람으로서 이 영화 안에서 시간, 그러니까 움직임의 시간을 어떻게 다루었는지가 좀 궁금합니다.
이제 무대 위에서는 저희가 어떻게 보면은 편집되지 않은 30분의 공연이라고 그러면 30분 동안 편집이 되지 않은 움직임들을 보다 보니까 그러니까 뭐가 더 좋다라는 거를 말하고 싶지는 않고 장단점이 있는 것 같아요. 그렇게 편집이 되지 않은 것들을 보다 보니까 사람들은 그 공연 자체로서 그냥 이렇게 몰입을 할 수가 있는 것 같고, 영화에서는 시간성에 대한 것들을 이제 어떻게 보면 조작을 하고 좀 더 편집을 할 수 있다는 점에서 이제 장점이라면 장점이 있는 것 같은데, 예를 들면 뭐 어떤 행동들이 있고 그 행동들이 일어나기 원래대로라면 그 다음의 시간을 보여줘야 되지만 뭐 플래시백이라든지 어떤 효과적인 편집을 통해서 뭐 과거의 이야기를 갑자기 거기다 넣음으로써 그 사람이 그 춤을 왜 추는지 어떻게 하는지에 대한 이야기도 넣을 수 있는 것 같고요. 그래서 어떻게 보면 볼레로라는 거를 저희 이제 기존의 안무가 어느 정도 있는 작품을 이제 필름으로 바꿔가지고 이제 녹이다 보니까 전체적인 길이를 그래서 처음부터 어느 정도는 이제 규정을 하고 시작을 했어요. 이게 전체적으로 우리는 몇 분 정도의 러닝 타임이 나올 것 같다. 왜냐하면 공연을 이게 너무 우리가 어렵게 생각하지 말자. 공연에서 했었던 것들을 필름으로 그대로 러닝 타임을 가지고 오는데 그 사이사이에 어떤 요소들을 넣자라는 식으로 된 거기 때문에 뒷부분에는 조금 바뀌어 있는 것들이 있지만은 중반 부분까지는 거의 그 안무 무대에서 했었던 그런 춤의 흐름이나 어떤 시간의 흐름은 그대로 필름에서도 가져갔었던 것 같아요. 그래서 비교해서 보면은 무대와 필름이라는 것 차이지 거의 그런 부분들은 거의 동일했기 때문에 저희가 조금 더 안무가와도 좀 더 수월했었던 것 같아요. 왜냐면은 이미 어떤 동작들은 정해져 있다 보니까 그럼 그 동작을 이 공간에 맞게 그리고 이 시간성에 맞게 조금 더 바꿔보면 어떨까라는 생각을 이제 할 수 있게 되니까 여기서 안무를 어떻게 새롭게 해야 되지라는 되게 막 너무 힘든 고민들보다는 좀 더 이제 발전된 고민들을 할 수 있었던 게 아닌가 싶습니다.
So I don't want to talk about what's better or what's not, but I think each medium has its pros and cons. Originally, the performance itself was a 30-minute performance, which is not edited, which audiences had to follow along. In the film, the strength of the film vocabulary is that we can manipulate the time. So on stage, people, the movements follow along a linear movement flow of time, but in the films we can use flashbacks by editing, or we can show the past of the movements or why and how these movements are arranged, and we can focus on certain movements. But as bolero itself, if we talk about how this was, how it was produced during the process, is because we had a certain time of the performance, we didn't really think it complex. We tried to think it a bit more simply. So we followed the flow of the performance and the original choreography. But what we did, we didn't create new choreography. We tried to place these original choreographic movements into new times and new places. So in that terms, the ending part is a bit different from the original performance, but the movement itself really follows the actual original piece of the performance. But still, I think through the film, we were able to move these new time concepts and places throughout the film.
A quick question to Vishwa and Eva to begin with. Do you work normally with the storyboard and camera angle and breaking up of the shots when you imagine about making a film? Maybe a couple of sentence answer, please.
Should I go?
Yes.
You can.
It depends on the scale of the film. For example, I did a fantasy choreography for cinema, for a commercial cinema. For that, we had to do storyboarding. We had to look at everything because it's very expensive. That process of shooting that film every day was going in crores. So for that we do. But as much as possible, it's a collaboration in artistic filmmaking where we have the cinematographer work with us and we sit and we figure out a few things. Not as much storyboarding unless there's a lot of funding involved in it. I mean, more or less, it's a collaboration from all the artists. And that's what makes like a really good, strong work. That's what I believe in, at least.
Over to you, Eva. Same question.
저 같은 경우는 사실은 엄청 즉흥적인 편이라서 기본적인 스토리보드를 그리고 뭔가 앵글들을 체크는 하긴 하지만은 어떻게 보면 그거는 이제 다른 스태프들이나 그런 사람들에 대한 배려 때문에일 수도 있겠지만 그렇게 하긴 하는데 제가 직접적으로 촬영을 관여를 하는 것도 좋아하고 하다 보니까 대부분 즉흥적으로 재밌는 그 상황에 맞는 컷들을 만들려고 하는 것 같아요. 이렇게 테이블에 앉아서 그런 걸 그리는 것보다는 그 현장에서 실제로 생각하는 인물과 그 배경이 그 사물들이 같이 있을 때 어떤 영감들이 떠오르는 것 같습니다.
So for me personally, I'm actually, I really improvise a lot. I do have a basic storyboard and a checklist, but I think this is mostly for the people who I work with, the colleagues who are on site. But I personally am inspired a lot on set and on site. I like to interfere with the cameras very closely, and I also I discover new cuts and new scenes from the actual situation and the actual characters when I see them in place. So I personally am a very improvisational person when it comes to filming.
Last word to Rati. Rati, as we go forward, do you see the role of online cultural activities, at least hybrid, and what is it in store for us?
Yeah, I think it is going to be hybrid, at least in the coming year, 2022. I think it would be a shame to lose some of the learning that we have. Either it's been thrust upon us or we have chosen to do it in the last 2 years. And if we take those calculated risks, I think it can be a very exciting offer where we can do both. We can have physical touring and presentation and exchanges, in this instance between India and Korea, collaborative work, which we have always been encouraging, with due research before we get into that. I think this very field of dance on camera, if there are ways we can work with Indian and Korean filmmakers, young dancers, choreographers, there's a rich minefield there that we can tap into and explore. So I am going to, at least as far as this series is concerned, really try and explore both with the Korean National Contemporary Dance Company and with 𝑘𝙚𝙣, what can we do in the future to take this conversation forward, both in terms of a series of films, but also dialogues that we can go through. But having said that, I think in all of the art forms that we work with, it is going to be hybrid. It's going to be a sort of phygital, if you like, so physical and digital kind of combination, at least in 2022, and we'll see what happens beyond that, the pandemic notwithstanding.
Thank you all for this wonderful evening, and thank you Korean National Dance Company, and thank you Inco Center from Chennai, and thank you Eva for presenting such wonderful film, and Hoyen for translating this so beautifully, and Rati Jaffer from Chennai, and Vishwakiran from Bangalore. Thank you all. Thank you all of you who have joined from different parts of the country and the world. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hoyen, Eva, and Vishwakiran. Thank you.